Hey everyone, welcome to another episode of High Energy Girl. And today's awesome guest is Genesis. Now, when I say awesome guest, this is the longest conversation that I've ever had on a podcast, and I could have kept going. So Genesis is a licensed mental health provider in New England. She has been working as a therapist since graduating with her master's degree in 2012. Genesis is also a Constitutional Patriot, having served active duty in the United States military for 11 years. And she became a therapist after serving in combat in Iraq. And now she is working on a doctorate degree in Integrative Medicine. She is an energy healer, a medium, a reiki practitioner, and a light warrior to others for her whole entire life. She also does a really cool technique called EMDR, and that helps her clients who are struggling with emotional wounds to heal their past trauma very quickly. I'm so excited for you to hear our conversation. We even do a practice session at the end of the chat. So let's go and say hello to Genesis. Hey everyone, welcome to High Energy Girl, a podcast helping women to age stronger because it is never too late to get fit, be strong, and feel sexy. I'm your host, Tracy Gluhige, health coach and personal trainer and founder of highenergygirl.com. Each week, we will either have a guest interview, which will provide you encouragement or an actionable tip to help you age stronger, or I will do a solo episode. Please also join our awesome Facebook group called High Energy Girls, and I'm looking forward to see you on the inside of that group and hope you enjoy today's show. Give a woman a fish, feed her for a day. Teach a woman to fish, feed her for a lifetime. Teach a woman to fish, end world hunger. Have you ever wanted to help people improve their health journey? Have you thought about coaching people with a keto lifestyle? Would you like to become an integrative health coach? Well, the Institute for Integrative Nutrition, or IIN as we call it, is the largest nutrition school in the country. And in 2011, I graduated from their program and became a health coach. It was completely awesome. We learned over 100 different dietary theories and talk about craziness and confusion. My wish for you is that we can lock arms and create a tribe of health coaches all around the country, all around the world to spread the keto message. If this resonates with you and you would like to look into this option deeper, please go to my blog at highenergygirl.com and click on the link to the right of the homepage. Here you can grab the curriculum guide and see if it inspires you. Since I care so much about my listeners, I negotiated the very best tuition rate for you at IIN. Either you can contact them directly and give them my name, or I will introduce you to a counselor so you can decide if this is a good fit for you and your career goals. Let me know how I can support you in this coaching career opportunity. Hey, Genesis, thanks so much for coming on the show today.
Hi, thanks for having me.
You are so cute. I love your backdrop, and I'm going to ask you about that. But for the listeners that don't yet know about you, why don't you tell us a little bit about yourself?
Well, that's a loaded question. There's a lot. So I am a licensed mental health therapist, and I do that mostly for my day job. I'm also a Reiki practitioner, and I do a lot of energy healing work. I'm also a medium, and I do a lot of like, I don't like the word psychic. I don't know, it just doesn't resonate with me. I do a lot of like channeling for people that I've had, past loved ones that have crossed over, or that want to get messages from, people, relatives, guides, family members, whatever. I kind of just do a lot of everything. You know what I mean? Like I feel like I'm just really, my life's just kind of all over the place, right?
And how did you get there? Because that is a large variety of talent, right?
Yeah.
Can we kind of just go to your backstory a little bit and talk about how you got to where you are now?
Yeah. So my mom was married a lot. I think she's on her fifth or sixth marriage now. I honestly, like when I graduated high school, totally lost count. I genuinely don't remember. I stopped paying attention. So my mother had 7 girls throughout the course of these different men that she was with throughout her lifetime. And so I'm the 6th out of the 7th child, which is kind of funny because spiritually I'm very connected to the Pleiades. And so the 7 sisters constellation, and my mother had 7 daughters. I don't know if there's anything there, but it just kind of feels a little bit intuitively, you know, kind of hitting the target, right? But yeah, so like I grew up in a big, large family. There was a lot of trauma. There was a lot of chaos, a lot of different styles of abuse running through childhood home. And we can get into that more later. But yeah, the biggest thing was that I didn't have a lot of friends growing up. And I was probably a weird kid because I could, from a very young age, from the farthest memories that I have going back, I remember like playing with my angels and my spirit guides all the time. And I kind of thought that everybody did that. And I thought that everybody was consciously aware of doing that. But that's, I guess, not really the case. So I didn't have a lot of friends growing up, but I kind of, and I didn't have a lot of support with my family growing up. But I do believe that I was able to achieve everything that I've been able to achieve and have gotten great direction because of that influence of, you know, my guides being an active participant in my life so far.
That seems beautiful because let's face it, 3D friends also come with judgment and, you know, mean girl type things, right? But how old were you then?
I mean, I remember having like memories back from the age of 4 and 5, talking with my guides and playing with them. And it's interesting because I remember very specific memories. It's a little silly story, but there's a little story. I don't tell too many people this, but I'll share it here. I remember sitting in church. I think I was 11. I remember being 11. I was sitting in church and I was sitting in the pew, and I was sitting in the front pew, and my sisters were all spread out behind me. And this was a very small church in New England, very small, maybe 35 people showed up for service, right? Like not a big congregation at all. I believe it was a Pentecostal church, if I remember correctly. So I'm sitting in the pew and my guides are sitting next to me and they're like talking to me. And again, I thought this was just normal. Like I thought everybody did this, right? But what was interesting about this day in church was that there was a man that was up at the altar that was getting saved. That man happened to be one of the boyfriends that my mother let move into our home that was sexually abusing all of us. And my older sisters got it way worse than I did. I mean, to be fair to them, you know, they're way worse. I mean, they were being statutorily raped on a daily basis. And what was so messed up about it was that they were both my sisters who were, I think, 13 and 14 at the time, something like that, were actually fighting over this man, this 25-year-old man that was statutorily raping both of them. So they were like getting into like sister cat fights over this guy. Like it was just absolutely crazy, right? But anyways, so we're in church, I'm sitting in the pew. This man who, you know, came to church with us is up at the altar, finally found God, finally getting saved. And I remember the pastor saying, anybody want to come down here and pray for brother, insert his name, I won't say his name, you know, pray for brother name, and you know, and help him get saved. And my guides looked at me and said, you should go up there and you should pray for him. And I kind of looked at them and said, you got to be kidding me. Like, are you crazy? Like, do you have any idea that this one man was the source of all of my issues growing up? Like he like flat out punched me in the nose one day because I made a comment about the mullet he had on his, like his haircut mullet. Like he was just such an aggressive jerk. And then all of the sexual abuse on top of it. I was just like, I'm so over this guy. But, you know, I had no control as a young girl. Like I had no control over whether he stayed or went in the home. And I remember turning around and looking at my sisters that were in the pew behind me. And I said, you know, we should go up and we should pray for him. And my sister's exact words were, are you fucking crazy? Fuck no. You know, she was just like, oh my God, no, are you crazy? And so that I sat there and I kind of just looked at my guides again. I could like see them, and I looked at them and was just like, I don't know, this is a tough one. And I said, but why would I do that? Why would I do that after everything that he's done to me and to our family? And they just said to me, but look at the compassion you'd be showing. And I was like, okay. And I went up there and I prayed for him, an 11-year-old, like going, you know, playing for this grown man, right? So I remember that being one of the first defining moments for me consciously, where I really understood what this was. You know what I mean? Like the fact that I had something that other people couldn't understand or couldn't see or couldn't tangibly, consciously get. But there was something special or different about me than there was about usually the people that were around me. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but I'm wondering what that would be. So my first question might be, when you said you can see them, did they look just like you and me sitting next to you, or were they more,
No.
what did they look like?
So most beings on, well, I don't want to say all, because all is too, you know, too exclusive, but from my experience, beings that are on higher vibrational dimensions, they don't take the shape of, they don't have faces, they don't have names, they don't have names that like we have names on the planet, right? They communicate, obviously everything's telepathically done, so there's not a need for like languages necessarily, and like the vowels and the consonant sounds necessarily. That's for us to be able to understand like consciously what's being said on the earth plane, but like that's not necessarily the way that it is when they communicate. So a lot of them, sometimes they'll take the shape of like a human form, just like an outline of a human form, just so like I know, or us humans know that they're one of us, or that they're walking among us, or that they have like experience on the earth. But a lot of them are just balls of light. They're just beings of light.
Interesting.
So that's really hard because I don't know how to describe it necessarily with like human words, but sometimes they have shapes. Sometimes it's just a presence. Sometimes it's just a ball of light. But nonetheless, they communicate the exact same. They communicate telepathically.
Okay. So when you say a ball of light, would that be what some people call an orb?
It could be.
Okay.
It could be. Yep.
I've seen somebody take a picture and share it amongst our community of them at like a wedding, and they had a photo and you can see like maybe 7 orbs in the background. It was just like,
amazing.
Whoa.
Yeah, that's amazing.
It's cool. So when you said you played with them, what do you mean like you played with them? Like, were they literally like your friends that you would do the same type of thing with if you had like 3D friends?
No, I mean, and so there was no like playing hopscotch, right? And like that's where my brain goes, like jump roping and playing hopscotch and doing those things that kids do. No, that wasn't what it was. It was more like, how do I describe this? It was more like a lot of sitting and communication and contemplation and support. And it would be like me bringing something to the table going, well, I want to do this, but nobody wants to play with me, or nobody wants to do this with me, or I don't know how to do this, or I want this end goal, but I don't know how to get there. And they don't answer your questions. They just ask thought-provoking questions to get you to arrive at your own answer, right? And so I've definitely thrown my many temper tantrums over the years with them, going like, why can't you just answer my question? I just want to know. And then they bringing me back to the point of why we're on the planet always, which is that we're here to participate in this human form, right? But I will say that there is something a little bit different about me than there is with most other people. Now, before I say this, I want to make it clear that I'm not better than anyone else. I don't think that I'm better than anyone else. I don't feel like I am. So I don't want to come across as egotistical. But it's very clear with all the work that I've done throughout my lifetime that I'm not here stuck and trapped in the reincarnation cycle the way that a lot of people are on the planet. I am one of those, what you'd call beyonders, right? Somebody that I have been on Earth before. That was when Atlantis fell. And so I was part of that civilization. But I'm not stuck in this reincarnation loop. I'm from a very, very, very far off, many, many, many different far off places, and have experienced lives in different dimensions and existences all throughout the multiverse and the universe, right? So it's very hard to pinpoint like one specific experience and say that, oh, in the past life I did this or I did that, because it's a little more complicated for me. But what's interesting and what backs up my theory here is if you were to pull my natal chart, I actually have nothing in the first 6 houses. Nothing. I don't have one touch point in the first 6 houses. And the first 6 houses are the earth, right? So like you look for, well, and I'm not an expert in astrology, so other people would know better than me, but from my understanding, you know, you start off at like the 9 o'clock position, and then you start off with your house 1 and you kind of go all the way around, right, to your 12th house. Everything from the midline below, everything on the horizon below is your earth karma, your earth contracts. Everything in the heavens above is your like spiritual contracts that you made with God necessarily, or whatever your fulfillment is. I have absolutely nothing on the whole lower half of my chart. Every single touch point of mine is in the heavens. And most of the touch points in my natal chart are right in the middle, like my, I think it's like my 10th house. I think most everything is right in the 10th. It's pretty crazy.
That is so interesting, but we need to break down a bunch of the things you said, just in case the audience, the listeners they've never heard these words before. So what is the reincarnation cycle? Can you please explain that a little bit, Genesis?
So most people are here because they started off as a baby seed soul, and there's so much evil and so much darkness on this planet that's filled with duality, right? And we've gone over duality. I think everyone knows what that is. That means that in order for you to appreciate the light, you have to have the dark. That means in order for you to know what happiness is, you need sadness. In order for you to be able to have free will, you have to know what it feels like to be trapped or have people that are evil on the planet that are working against you. So duality is the forces of light and the forces of dark, and the kind of the push-pull between the two.
Contrast.
Yes. Yeah, that's a really good way to say it, is contrast. So not everybody on the planet, but there is the majority of like human souls that you might find in your country are kind of stuck in this reincarnation cycle, meaning that they have contracted with source energy, whatever you call that, whether it be God, the universe, source, whatever you want to call that. They've contracted with source energy to come onto the planet and to learn certain things in this lifetime. And if they don't learn those things, they basically have to come back and they have to do it again. and so most people, and part of that reincarnation cycle is part of the evil forces on the planet that have been kind of duping people, and that's a whole conversation for like another time, right? Because that's just, we could talk for hours about that. But a lot of people are, how my guides showed it to me. Do you want me to maybe describe this as the way that my guides explained it to me? Now, again, they teach me in analogies. So am I saying it, is it exactly like this? Of course not. But is this enough of an analogy for our limited human brains to be able to understand the concept? This is what they've explained to me. That source creation creates these souls, basically. And I know that we're not spit out of a conveyor belt, but basically they showed me the image of like, if you were in a factory and you had like product coming down the line, right? Like you have all these little like souls that were just created that are kind of bouncing down this like conveyor belt, right? Again, this is a complete and total analogy. What ends up happening is they end up getting a contract. They basically get this, and again, this is total pretend, but like, let's pretend and say it's like a 50-page contract, okay? Or they get this like syllabus or course list. And basically, it's like in order for you to evolve to get the closest towards your ascension process possible, you can call it whatever you want, ascension, you can call it ascended master like training, you can call it, you know, being a mini god, whatever you want to call it. You basically have this full-blown checklist of things that you have to experience in some sort of an incarnation form outside of the protection and the love, because on the other side, there's only the love vibration. There's only happiness and joy and bliss. So your soul wants to know what it's like to come to a planet like Earth, because there's many different ones out there. Earth is not the only one, right? But many different experiences or existences like Earth, and taste pizza or taste ice cream, or knows what it's like to have an addiction, or knows what it's like to, you know, to be able to consciously choose love versus being unloved, or healthy eating versus junk food, right? So like that's a good choice of duality. Like, do I eat healthy, or do I eat what feels good to me in the moment and gives me that 20-minute rush of sugar, right? So that's a good duality choice. But in order for us to choose the choices that are the healthiest for us, or are of the light, we have to have the influences of the darkness in order to understand what that contrast is, right? So basically, bringing the conversation back to the other side, like we have this like checklist, and we get to choose and decide which things we want to experience. So if you have friends or family members that have addictions, they have consciously before they started this lifetime, they've consciously chosen to have that be a major theme in their life. Now, how the actual addiction plays out, how it actually manifests, that's up to the individual. That's where the free will comes in. It could be pornography, it could be drugs, it could be a million different things, right? It could be alcohol, it could be sex, it could be whatever. So we want to experience these things. We contract to come down and experience these things. And so when you look at life that way, you realize that the people that are around you are not weirdos. They're not freaks. They're not, you know, necessarily sick individuals. They're people that are living out their contract that they're supposed to be living out. Now, ultimately, at the end of the day, the goal is to live it out and then transcend it, right? So the goal is to have the addiction and then transcend the addiction and heal yourself from it.
While here.
Well, yeah, or whatever existence that you're in. I mean, again, I try to make it like not specific just to Earth, right? But yeah, it could be, you could be on Earth, you could be on whatever other planet, right? That has duality, that has the negative, the low vibrational energies. Because a lot of existences are just like the other side, where they're just all high vibration, and they're not, and there's no low vibration to contrast that. So the Earth is the hardest school in our Milky Way. Hands down, the hardest school. When you get serious about your contracts, you come to Earth. Earth is not easy. There are other places like Earth, and other multiverses, and in other universes, and in other existences. So Earth is by no means the only opportunity of a place to go for a real hard schooling. But Earth is like, it is like when you graduated Earth, like you've got it. You've nailed it. You figured it out.
Wow.
Yeah, it's incredible.
This is intense. Like, how do you know all this? Just because of the messages you got from your guides, or have you done other study?
I have not done other studies. Obviously, I have, you know, a master's in therapy, and then I'm working on a doctorate in integrative medicine. But like the knowledge that I have that I'm sharing just comes from what I've learned over the course of the last 35 years.
Okay. And then what is the chart you mentioned? What is that chart called? And I need to tell us more about that chart that you said you're missing the lower half.
Yeah, so everybody should go on to, there's several different websites. There's Astro, there's Cafe Astrology, there's, I forgot the third one is my favorite, and I forgot the name of it. Basically, though, you can just Google like free natal chart. Now, serious astrologers, which I am not, and I'm very ignorant when it comes in a lot of astrology. I'll be very, very clear, right? So I don't want someone who's really a pro in astrology to be like, she's wrong. But but you start like criticizing what I'm saying. But what you want to do is you want to Google like free natal chart. And you're going to be asked to put in your full name, your date of birth, the time that you were born. The time that you were born is so important. So go to your birth certificate, find out the time that you were born, and put that in, and then the location of where you were born. And what it does is it pulls up a snapshot of what the night sky looked like while you were born. And then the way the night sky was in relation to the sun and the moon and the stars and how it all plays out determines basically what your life looks like. It's extremely, extremely accurate.
Cool. Okay, that'll be a fun homework assignment for everyone. So I feel like what you have experienced growing up is so different than most of us. Do you know the reason why you got to play in that sphere where the rest of us are just so dense?
Well, I don't want to insult anyone else. And so I don't want to call anyone else. I don't want to limit anyone else's experience, right? Because I don't want to offend anybody. But what I will say is this is what I teach clients when they're in front of me and I'm working with them, right? People that came on the planet like I did, there's a reason for it. I'm not a victim. I'm not some victim. I chose to go through the hell that I went through. Now, to be fair, while I was going through it, I felt like a victim. Okay. So like I threw my temper tantrums. I felt like I was a victim for sure. Right. But having worked through all of that and healed myself, and we'll talk about that in a minute. So I'm trying to think of the best way to explain this. Okay. My daughter was very young and she was watching a Care Bear episode, a cartoon Care Bear episode. And they talk about care a lot. Care a lot is a meter. And depending on the good deeds that the Care Bears do in care a lot, okay, the meter goes up in love, in care. Okay. So my daughter had just watched that, and I watched it she was like 3 or 4 at the time. And I had just sat down and watched that with her. So when I got into, it was like a couple days later, independent of that, I asked my guides and I said, how do you guys track consciousness on the planet? Because like, I really, like, these are the questions I was asking at like 18, 19, 20, right? Like I was a weirdo. I'm a weirdo, right? I'm a total weirdo. So
I would not say that. I think it's beautiful. I'm a little jealous.
I had to have been about 25 maybe when I asked that. I guess if my daughter was like, if she was like 3 or 4, then I had to have been like 20, 24, something like that. But anyways, I'm still a weirdo. But so I asked them, like, how do they track consciousness? This is what they showed me. They took me into this room, and it was a white on white on white marble room. Everything was white. The desks were white. The chairs were white. Ceiling, floor, marble, like a shiny sheen, marble everywhere. The room was like 40 feet wide, right? It was huge. It looked like a huge conference room. And then literally this big screen popped up out of nowhere. Like the screen just like popped up and rose up out of the floor. And they showed me a map of the world, and it was all like digitally black. And then they had every soul or every sentient being on the planet was a blinking white light. And depending on how bright your light was, depended on how bright your blink basically was. Okay. That's really important to answer your question, for us to understand the foundation of this. Think about this for a second. If the good guys, when I say good guys, we can talk about the Alliance, the Galactic Federation, the White Hat, whatever you want to call the people that are working for good, right? If the good guys can track you, guess who else can track you? The bad guys, right? Mm-hmm. So the same technology to a degree, right, that the good guys have to check the levels of consciousness, fourth dimensional, the low vibrational beings can as well. Okay. So they were showing me basically, because I kept asking them, why was I born into this family? Why was I born into all of this? Like I was dumped into this trauma and this chaos, and I didn't consciously have a choice on this planet. Why? I mean, I know now why, right? But like at the time I was asking, like, why am I going through this? what they showed me was that when my soul had a choice to come down here to the earth to help out with this Great Awakening, that's why I'm here, is for the Great Awakening. But when my soul chose to come down here, I only had like 5 or 6 options to come in, to incarnate within a family. I could have been in like Uganda. I could have been in like, I think South Africa was a choice. I think South America was a choice. And then we had New England in the United States. And so I chose to come in through that family. But part of the reason that they showed me that I chose to come in through this family was because there was so much trauma going on and so much chaos and so much evil going on in my own family that the evilness or the low vibrational energy of certain members of my family, not all members, but certain members of my family, helped dim my light when I was born and when I was raised, which protected me, ultimately protected me throughout me being raised. And then I went into the military at 18, right? and did 11 years active duty, right? But during that time and that growing up and that whole transition, it was about being able to, for me to have to go through enough trauma to dim my light enough to kind of protect me, to fade me out and wash me out in the big global scheme of being able to track consciousness and light on the planet. Does that make sense?
Let me see if I hear what you're saying. So essentially you came into this family so that you almost weren't radiating your true self because the dark energy wanted it to be that way.
The dark energy will take you out. If you come on the planet as a very bright, energetic beam of light, if you come in your full glory and your full beauty, right? The dark forces on the planet can track that, and they'll end up taking you out somehow.
Wow.
I mean, so a lot of, I've found that a lot of people come into the planet with the same situation. They're very, very high spiritual beings. Most of them have ADHD, by the way, which is pretty funny. Very high vibrational spiritual beings. A lot of them come from a traumatic background, and the trauma is not theirs necessarily. The trauma is the family lineage that they're choosing to come through. And they're like for me personally, I know that a few members in my family I've incarnated with numerous times, but a lot of members of my family I've never incarnated with before. So this is kind of like a mix of of souls here. And so there's just a lot of, I don't know what the word I'm looking for is. I'm sorry. It's hard to find like English words to a lot of what I see and what I feel, right?
Mm-hmm. I've heard that before.
Yeah, so I'm sorry if I'm like stuttering a little bit and I'm like a little bit all over the place. It's hard to equate some of this to an actual like language. But yeah, essentially, the relationship between my family and I has always been a little bit interesting. I've always been extremely sensitive. And the environment that I grew up was not conducive to that because I felt everything 10 times more intense than, a lot of my other family members did, which made it really difficult to function and thrive in that environment.
Yeah. I feel what you're feeling. My dad was married 5 times. He left my mom. He was a cheater. I was happy that they were divorcing because he was so horrible. But then she went through this whole thing with boyfriends and abusive husbands. And so I'm feeling a lot of I experienced a lot of what you're saying you experienced. And then it's like, why do we go through all of that trauma? But then also, what can we do to be more light? Like how can we be more like you?
Well, so I'm going to walk you through in a little bit. I'm going to walk you through an exercise that everybody can do today, and that's going to help start resetting your brain. Okay. And one of the things, though, that I do want to point out, just to go back to the point we were making before, is one of the things that I work with clients a lot on and talk to them about is I want to remind everybody that, people come to me for clinical therapy or for healing work, and it's usually family, relationally, I have issues with my mom, my dad abused me, whatever it is. The first concept I want people to understand when it comes to your family that you're on earth with, you have to first ask yourself, would I be friends with this person if they were not my family? Do I like who they are at the core of who they are, right? Or am I only associating with them because it's my mom or my sister and I feel obligated and guilt-ridden, like I have to, right?
Hmm.
But also remember, the more important point here is that, and there are people that will disagree with me, and there are people that are very strict Christians that don't believe in reincarnation, and that's fine, right? But the point that I'm making is that when you come down here to earth, you choose the people that you're having, you choose your mother chooses you, you guys go in a joint contract together, right? So your mother's not your mother on the other side. My guides have been very clear that we don't have parents on the other side. We are our own individual, unique, beings of light. And we don't, and we come from the creation of source. We don't have parents on the other side. We don't have a mommy and a daddy. That's not to say that we don't have tribes or we don't have, tribal type communities or communities where we share like-mindedness and whatnot. That it doesn't mean that there's not some sort of a relational aspect over there. But when it comes to like a mommy and a daddy, procreated and then gave an offspring, like it doesn't work like that over there.
I also heard they're not male female. It's just a
right.
Spirit is both. So you have the feminine and masculine energy combined in one light being. Okay.
That's right. And one of the things that I want to talk about today too is what's going on with the mental health community.
Okay.
Right. So nobody's really talking about this. And I don't know if it's because people just don't know. Everybody talks about big pharma and everyone's talking about the medical community, but no one's talking about the mental health community, right? So the bigger issue that I have with it all is that, I have, sorry, lost my train of thought. Okay, mental health community. We have therapists that are trained, and their main goal and their main mission is to refer clients to doctors for psychotropic medication.
A psychiatrist. So a therapist refers a patient to a psychiatrist for meds. Is that what you said?
Or a psychiatrist or a med manager. There are different levels. You can be a nurse practitioner. You can be an MD. You can be like a family practitioner MD for psych meds sometimes too. So it's not always a psychiatrist, right?
Okay.
But when we're talking about like the current global state of affairs on the planet, and when we're talking about like what's going on with big pharma and the vaccines and them trying to eradicate the population on the planet, nobody's talking about the mental health community and kind of how disruptive it is and how it feeds that system and feeds that same machine. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
So I want you to think about like when you go to a doctor. Now, not all doctors are bad, clearly, and there is some value in some of the medications, right? Like ivermectin is a great medication, right, to be taking. And I will also say that I've worked in psych wards before, and there are some people that seem so far gone that the only way to get a hold of them so they're not out destroying society is sadly to put them on medication. And I don't agree with that, but there's also not another system in place to deal with people that have extreme mental illnesses either, right? So right now, the only thing you can really do is contain them or medicate them, right? Go ahead.
Would you call that a temporary measure or a long-term measure for that particular type of patient?
Well, of course, it's a temporary measure. It's all a temporary measure, right? It puts a Band-Aid on everything, just like everything in the whole medical community puts a Band-Aid on everything. Well, most things. Think about this. You go to the story I hear all the time is I'm feeling a little bit depressed and I'm feeling a little bit anxious. And instead of the client working out, eating healthy, taking any accountability and any ownership for why they're feeling that way, most people I find are in a job that they hate. Most people I find that are doing things, they're out of obligation to their family, their mother, their father, because they feel they have to be a good daughter or family member, but they absolutely hate doing it. And then they come to me and wonder why they're depressed. Well, because you're stuffing your emotions. You are not listening to yourself. You're not listening to your heart. You're not doing what you or your soul wants you to be doing, which is free, to be free of all of those restrictions and obligations. You should be doing everything in your highest joy and in your highest excitement. And I understand that people have to put food on the table. So a lot of people have to sacrifice their happiness to pay their bills. So to those people, I say, of course, that makes logical sense. But you could still be doing little incremental things every week or every month or every day to get you towards the goal of whatever it is that you want to be doing, right? Instead of what you have to be doing, right? So ultimately, if we all lived in our highest excitement and our highest joy every day, and we did the things that brought us true passion and excitement, we wouldn't have mental health issues.
That makes sense.
We genuinely wouldn't, because we wouldn't be stuffing emotions, and we wouldn't, now there's a whole subset of people that have traumas, like from my childhood or like where I grew up, and they can't really help it consciously in this lifetime. They can't help it. So those people do need to face their traumas, and they have to work through them in order for them to be freed. There's no way around that. I tell clients all the time, you can't go around the mountain. You can't go under it. You can't go over it. The only way to free yourself is to go right through the mountain. You got to face it. And maybe that's a silly analogy, but you have to face it. You have to face it head on in order for you to do that. And we'll talk a little bit more later today about what therapies and what modalities kind of can help, which clinical treatment modalities are the best at getting rid of, like, no BS, cutting right to the core of it and getting rid of it to free yourself. A lot of mental health treatment is, I don't want to offend the entire community, right? So I'm trying to choose my words carefully. Well, let me put it to you this way. The leading theorists, like Freud, everyone's heard of Sigmund Freud, right? The leading theorists like Freud and B.J. Skinner, and there are literally dozens. If you, and I don't remember the name of the book exactly. I know I have a copy of it. I know it has a maroon cover. It's the MK Ultra book that's been going around a lot of the Telegram channels. And so people will know what I'm talking about just by that, right? And you can find it. But if you read and you do a little bit of digging and some research, you're going to find that Sigmund Freud, B.J. Skinner, all of our real leading founding theorists in the mental health community, they were all on the CIA payroll. And then 1940s and 1950s, absolutely. So I need you to really think about this for a minute. You have the medical community who doesn't really heal anything. They just prescribe medication to keep you coming back in the medical community, right? And then putting you on medication makes you get side effects. So you need other medication to cover up those side effects. Well, the mental health community is largely very much the same, and I'm shocked that nobody's talking about it. So you have our leading founding theorists that were all on the CIA payroll, that were all part of the MK Ultra. And by the way, if you don't know what that is, for anybody who's listening, it was basically our government's way of absolutely horrifically torturing human beings in every possible way to figure out how to extract consciousness or transfer consciousness or figure out what the limitations of the human consciousness was. And a lot of the reasons that they did that, and this is how the entire mental health community started. The reason that they were doing this is because a lot of the people that ran these programs were also beings that were so low vibration, part of the fourth dimension, that they were trying to figure out how to hack consciousness so they didn't actually have to do the work to ascend. The dark forces can't figure out how us light beings do the work that we do and how we transcend with the thoughts that we have. They can't figure it out because they can't replicate that. They can't replicate God's beautiful work, right?
Yeah, I've heard that.
Yeah, and so the MK, this whole MK Ultra program is just one of many, 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 right? So that's not all there is. But my point is that people don't realize that when they go to seek a therapist, now, to be fair, a lot of people do find treatments like cognitive behavioral therapy healthy or helpful. And that is true. You will gain a little bit of understanding. You'll gain a little bit of an awareness about your thoughts and why you're thinking what you're thinking and how to try to stop them. But why does the majority, and I mean the majority, 90% of the mental health modalities that we as therapists are trained to have to use for clients, they all teach clients how to deal with their same trauma and their same emotions for the rest of their life?
Because like it's not working, because why would they have to keep doing it the rest of their life?
Exactly.
Right? Shouldn't it be move on and be on the other side of it?
Exactly. And that's exactly my point. So there are treatment modalities out there that have come on scene in the last 20 to 30 years. The biggest one that is just incredible and that's very mainstream is called EMDR. It stands for eye movement desensitization and reprocessing. And that treatment modality. So my point of bringing this up is that if anybody's out there suffering with childhood trauma or trauma from a past relationship or from an abusive ex or from whatever, right? Rape, sexual assault, whatever it is, you are by large wasting your time by going to a therapist and doing cognitive behavioral therapy or trauma cognitive behavioral therapy with that, which teaches you how to manage your stress and your anxiety and your depression for the rest of your life. Or you could just do EMDR and get rid of 90% of your symptoms for the rest of your life.
Wow.
It is so powerful. And I've actually adapted. I've taken the clinical EMDR and there's a couple limitations with it that I found doing this for about 15 years with thousands of clients during my own work. I found that there are some limitations. I've been able to kind of bypass through some of those limitations. And so I have and I'm not trying to say this to be egotistical, I'm just sharing. I want other people to know that there are treatment methods out there that actually work, that will reset you, that will get rid of the trauma by large. On average, I'm really strongly right at about the 95% mark with getting rid of people's trauma completely, or helping them get rid of their trauma completely.
And how many sessions on average does that take?
Well, that's a really good question. So when I went, I was in combat, right? I had a couple combat deployments. And so I ended up going and doing EMDR myself as a client for the combat PTSD. And it took me about 2 years to get through it with the way that the clinical structure of EMDR is. It took me about 2 years to get through it. And but now now that I'm here, that was like 15 years ago, right? And but now with my own clients, with tweaking it a little bit and limiting some of those, removing some of those limitations, I'll say, I haven't had anybody in treatment for longer than 8 months.
Wow.
And the average person, and that was severe, complex childhood trauma, but the average person I can do usually 3 to 4 months and have them be done with therapy completely.
Wow, that's amazing, Genesis.
Yeah,
that's really cool.
And I haven't had anybody have any sort of reaction, negative reaction at all to any of the little clinical trials that I've done or anything. So far it's, for the last 15 years, it's been working amazing.
Can you treat people distance or do you have to do it face to face?
So that's a really good question. I can do it through telehealth, and I do it a lot through telehealth. The only difference is that EMDR is based off of REM sleep. So at night when we get into REM sleep, our eyes twitch back and forth, and there's a cleansing process where the brain actually shrinks a little bit in size. And there's a cleansing process where the cells in the brain are cleansed during that time, and we process traumas and we process fears, and that happens, and that's the magic when the amygdala back here opens up and allows all of that kind of boxed up trauma to start to kind of release. And so I got off on a tangent. I'm sorry. What was your original question?
Can you do it at a distance or does it have to be face to face?
Yes, I'm so sorry. Yeah, so the point of me telling you about the method behind it, right, is that in order for the amygdala to open up, you have to bilaterally sync the right and left hemispheres of the brain together. Okay. And so the only way you can do that is by either following a stimulation for the eye or tapping on your body, a very specific way of tapping your body. Believe it or not, yoga is one of the few, because we were talking about yoga earlier. Yoga is one of the few methods that also bilaterally sync the right and left hemispheres of the brain together.
Interesting. I teach this somatic breathing technique, and part of it that I don't do often has to do with shaking different areas, and it's supposed to wake up both sides of your body. And I never thought about that until you just mentioned it.
Yeah, yoga is one of the most amazing practices because it's one of the very few physical things that you can do that activate both the right and left hemispheres of the brain. And the reason for that is because let's say I don't know the names of the poses because I don't teach yoga, okay? But let's say that you get into I don't know, you get into some sort of like a warrior lunge and then you twist the body in the opposite direction. That is forcing the right and left hemispheres of the brain to bilaterally sync together because the brain's twisted up and it doesn't know what it's doing. And so everything kind of alerts and opens up and activates. Okay. And so I'm sorry, it's hard. I go down through so much information that it's hard to kind of remember and I get lost easy sometimes. So I'm sorry for that.
It's okay. I've also heard that people that are very much of the light, like you, have a less of a memory because they're mostly in this space and not here. So they have a hard time remembering. Is that true for you?
That's very, very true. But I think I feel like I look like a spaz, right? Because I'm all over the place and I can't remember what you had just asked, right?
Remember, I deal with Ron every day. And so I totally get it.
But yeah, so the reason I'm spending time going over the process of EMDR is if people are out there and they have trauma, I want them to go find an EMDR therapist because so many people go to seek therapy. And then like I get clients all the time that have had 3, 4, 5, 6 therapists. And I'm like, I don't know how to take that. Like if 5 other people couldn't help you, can I really help you? Right?
Can you?
So, I don't know. It depends on that. That's a good question, actually. I'll tell you, when clients send me over like the description of the problems that they're having, and one of the questions is like, how many times have you been in treatment? And if I see somebody who's like been in treatment for like 20 years and has had like 13 different therapists, I will not accept them as a client because I'm like, those people are professional clients. And what they do is they know the lingo. They know all the clinical lingo better than the therapist does, and they like demand that the therapist talk that way and do that. Oh, it's ridiculous. And so there's this element, it's almost like clients like that often come to try to heckle the therapist. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it's like a game to them, it sounds like.
Kind of. I mean, and I'm not implying that that's true for everybody, right? But to a lot of people, that's kind of the way that it turns out to be, right? And so it just, so you know that like, I'll help anybody if they're ready for change. But if they're not ready for change, they're not the client for me because I'm going to push for change and I'm not going to coddle them. I mean, I'm empathetic and I'm nice and I'm kind and I'm polite, but you only can hold that space for so long for somebody. At some point, they actually got to start doing the work. And if they're not ready to do the work, then they're not the right client for these types of modalities. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And do you feel like because of the trauma, we as like a whole Earth population have suffered in the last 2.5 years? Well, actually, there's 2 questions here. Do you feel like there's more people that are going to need treatment because of that? Like, it breaks my heart to see children in masks.
Yep.
It's heartbreaking. Today I'm at yoga and 2 of the women walk into the studio with a mask on. I didn't even rejoin that gym until they took the mask rule out, like I refuse.
Yeah.
But like the kids, It's heartbreaking. And I feel like sometimes often I see parents, no mask, kids with a mask, which tells me that the kid is living in fear.
Yep. Well, remember too, so you got a couple things going on here. Yes, it is horrific. Yes, it is a tragedy. Yes, it is all by design. Yes, it is to try to remove, kill our immune systems. It's all about depopulating the planet. But on top of that, remember too that it's also a soul's choice.
Mm.
And this is the piece that and I hate it just as much as you do. And so I'm not trying to defend, people that are making those choices, right? Because it really irks me, because I can feel, as an empath, I can feel the damage that it's doing to people. And that's heavy, and that's just icky, right? And nobody wants to feel that. But I will also say, to have a very balanced approach here and to try to play, the other side here, I will say that that is a soul's choice. So our individual souls have chosen whether or not you're going to comply with this whole thing, whether or not you're going to take the vaccine, whether or not you're going to follow the mandates. Your soul is making the choices here. Everybody in the planet is being separated very clearly from who's following the narrative and who is not following the narrative. Here's the scary thing, though. I don't really know of too many other professions out there other than a therapist that meets with people on a daily basis, week after week after week after week, talks about their most intimate insecurities, their most intimate vulnerabilities, their belief systems, their value systems, their religious spirituality beliefs. And I can tell you, being on the front lines of having a large sample of people that I work with, they're not woken up yet. I know, like I am, and I'm not trying to be negative. I'm trying to be honest. I feel like those who have woken up have woken up.
Mm-hmm.
Like, if you haven't gotten it by now, you're not going to get it. I mean, you have any idea how hard it is? Like, I had a client just the other day who, she showed up with her reproductive rights and her abortion t-shirt to our clinical session. And, she's like, oh, my husband's running for like some political office, right? And so she's kind of bragging about that, and she's bragging about like her stance on everything, and she believes, because most therapists are very liberal, so I think that she believes that she thought she was in good company, because she has all these very left liberal leanings and ideas, and they're all very based in non-truth, right? And I think she thought that I was going to kind of like talk about that or jump on that bandwagon. But my point is do you have any idea how hard it is to sit there and help somebody from a human perspective, from a humanitarian perspective, knowing that they're living their life in the complete most dysfunctional way possible? Right?
Yeah, I'm surrounded by them.
That is not an easy thing to do. And I will tell you that largely by far, one of the ways that I get clients that come to me on the intake paperwork, they're allowed to ask for a conservative therapist or a liberal therapist. And I will tell you that so far in the last 3 years, I've had one conservative request come through.
Wow.
One.
So what's going to happen?
The rest have all been asking for a liberal therapist. So my point to you is, and I live in a state that is mixed. It's a half and half state. So part of the state is extremely conservative. The other half of the state is extremely liberal, right? So it can kind of go, it can kind of go either way, right? In the state, as far as like voting rights and like all of those things. So I have a really good mixture of clientele. And I'll tell you though, that they're not awake. They have no idea still. They believe that they're fighting for what they believe is the right thing. And I'll say that most of the people, they think they're good people and they think that they're doing the right thing. Mm-hmm. They're just really, really, really far off from the reality of the basic truths of the universe and the basic truths of creation, the basic truths of, God or source or how our universe works. And their soul doesn't know that. You know what I mean?
Well, I think I feel sorry for them, but obviously their soul came for that reason, like you just said. But the television and the programming, and they believe their doctor. And, you know, it's like, it's all programming. And the doctors, I have to say, I mean, many of them have really good hearts, but they were trained by the pharmaceutical mafia, who has the agenda that started back with Rockefeller and Carnegie, and, you know, all of that when the Western medical schools came aboard. So, but I guess the bigger picture here is, how do we help bring that great awakening in? And why don't you explain a little bit about what the Great Awakening is and how can we bring it forward? Because I know that I was born for this, to be a part of this. And it's so hard because I used to be sound asleep. Like, I just went about my daily life. You know, I was always conservative because, you know, I was a Bible thumping mama. And then COVID hit and I was like, this just doesn't smell right to me. I know how the immune system works. This is ridiculous. You know, using all this hand sanitizer is horrible for us. The masks, like, give me a break. And so all of a sudden I started going down rabbit trails, you know, and digging and digging and digging. And I was like, holy crap. Like, I didn't even know who Joe Biden was or who Mike Pence was. I had no clue. I had no clue about anything, but now I'm catching up really quickly. But what do we do? What do we do next? Because that is so much bigger.
So that, you know, and you've heard this before. I'm not, you know, the answer to this question is nothing that everyone doesn't already know and that everyone hasn't already heard before, right? So the number one thing is to remove yourself from government dependence. Hands down. So you can look at the Great Awakening as in, we need to go back to the older ways that we used to do things. Before all the technology started coming on board. Think about this for a second. Everybody says, oh, we're transitioning into 5D. We're transitioning into 5D. Well, guess what? Guess what's not in 5D? All of the extreme technology is not in 5D. You don't need technology in 5D because you are the technology. You don't need it, right? So one of the worst things right now, and I'm not talking about like the consciousness of the planet and the consciousness and the fabric of like everything that is, right? I'm not talking about that because that comes from source, right? But when it comes to all of the technology that we have, all of the Alexas, all of the you know, stuff that keeps us on the grid and all the electric cars and all these things, the best thing that we can do is go back to the way that we used to live off the land, learn how to farm, learn, you know, homeschool your kids if you can, eat organic, eat grass-fed, eat organically sourced whole foods. You know, and I was that mom. I've always been awake. To be fair, I've always been awake. But I got really tired of fighting because I've been fighting this battle for as many years as old as I am, right? So I won't disclose my age, right? But for as many years old as I am, so I've been fighting this battle for a long time. So I'm not going to lie, I've had moments of weakness myself. Like when I became a therapist early on, I couldn't have a private practice. You have to do like 6,000 hours in a clinical agency in order to even get to finish your license. So I had to be out working in agencies, and I had to be out of the home, and I couldn't stay home to homeschool and do all of those things right at the time. But as soon as I got that opportunity and those requirements were over with, I jumped ship and then kind of reconfigured my life so I could homeschool. I could be doing all of these things as well, right? The more that we pull away from this technocratic society, the more that we pull away from all of these things, we're no longer feeding the beast. We are responsible, partially. I mean, yes, there's a lot of evil that is perpetrated on the planet, and the low vibrational beings get to take responsibility for that. But we keep perpetuating it because of convenience. And people are, and everybody is like, okay, well, that's cool. The Anons are over there and they're fighting the battle. The keyboard warriors are over there. They're fighting the battle. The Trumps are over there. They're fighting the battle and they're going to do it for me. It's fine. And that's the mentality of even a lot of the patriots have that mentality. Very few people are willing to stand up and say, I don't comply. Now, I'm not talking about standing up in a violent way, but I'm talking about when you walk in to go to a store and they say, I'm sorry, you need to put a mask on. You can challenge them on your constitutional rights. If they kick you out of the store, okay, fine, they kick you out, but don't go back there and shop.
Yeah, yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like, that's not, and I'll say this real quick. There were when the pandemic was happening and everybody was masked up and there were mask requirements everywhere, it even got to the point where like for like a year and a half, you couldn't go anywhere and do anything without a mask, right? There were still 3 local natural food stores in my town or within reasonable, 30, 40 minutes of where I live that I could go to that never forced mask mandates ever. So I had my gym trained. I went to the owner of the gym, who's a friend of mine, and she believes the same things that we believe. And I said, you make me put a mask on. I'm not even wearing one coming in the door. I'm not wearing one to my spot to work out. I'm not wearing one at all. Like, I'm not doing it. So either you get to choose. Are you gonna be okay with that, or are you gonna kick me out basically of your business? And she was like, nope, you do you. So I just did me. I got my chiropractor trained. I go to see him every other week or whatever, and he gave me a little bit of a pushback, but I was like, not doing it. You're going to lose me as a patient. He said, okay, I'll make a deal with you. You go wait in your car. We'll text you when the lobby's clear and there's nobody in here, and then you can come in. I said, fine, but I'm just not putting one on. So between the 3 places that I would go right during the whole pandemic was the gym, the chiropractor, and these health food stores. And one of them, the closest one to me, again, didn't force anything. But it blows my mind. It's a health food store that's all organically sourced. You think people that are shopping there, you think they're smart and educated, right? No, they were the worst ones wearing the masks.
Yeah, I know. I live with that all the time. My best friends, it's crazy. My best friend, she got the 3rd booster, then got COVID, and then got a 4th one. And then she was sick after each time she got shots, and she has cancer now. And she won't listen to anything I say, nothing. And it's just sad. But I do like how you said, well, that was your sole contract. But I want to focus less on the problem and more on the solution.
Okay, sorry.
Whatever we give energy to is what we expand, right? So what, in your experience, do you feel like we need to do to get on the other side of this? I know you said don't comply, remove yourself from the beast. But what else can we do?
So meditation, and when I say meditation, I don't necessarily mean gimmicky meditation out there, but people need to start spending time in solitude. People need to be spending time in nature. People need to turn their technology off, turn their phones off, turn, for the love of God, turn like the streaming app services and the TV off, right? And instead of you sitting down and watching TV and wasting your time with the live vision, right? You need to be spending time going inward, whatever that means to you. It could be sitting in contemplation. It could be sitting in contemplation, talking to God or source. It could be meditating. It could be self-help books. It could be whatever your issue is. Here's the number one thing. If we can all heal ourselves, we will heal this planet, and this thing would be over with overnight. That's the key. The key is that when you heal yourself, when you heal yourself, you stop the generational lineage of trauma, okay? You stop the cycles of abuse, so they're no longer going to be passed down to your kids, your grandkids, your great-grandkids. When I have clients that come to me for healing, I tell them they're nervous and they're anxious to get started. They don't know what to expect. And I say, look, you're not doing this for you. You're doing this for your great-grandkids that you haven't even met yet. But if you don't clean up this trauma, that whatever you have going on with inside of you, and 9 times out of 10, people's traumas are not their fault at all. Very few people consciously stumbled into trauma and made a conscious choice to do that, right? Yeah. Most people are pure victims of the way that this earth is wired energetically because of the dark forces on the planet, right? And they're kind of trapped in that little box that they've put themselves in. Most people are so trapped with fear that they refuse to get outside their comfort zone to even heal themselves. So the number one thing that we can do is if you can heal yourself, and that is a constant journey. It is a way of life. It is not a one-time thing. You can't go to an office, one acupuncture visit and think that you're gonna do it. Look, with my childhood trauma and with my combat PTSD, and I tell clients this story because I don't want them to think I'm above them. I don't want them to think that I'm egotistical and more special than them and like, oh, well, you have that. And I had to go through the same crap myself. So when I got out of the military, I was very hardened and I would not open up and talk about my feelings or my emotions to anybody. I'd lash out a lot. I was angry a lot, right? I'm very protective, in a very protective zone, always. Very, very, very sensitive and very empathic, right? And I remember reading an article that was done by the Johns Hopkins University at the time. This was like 2013, 14, 15, something like that. And it was about taking combat veterans to Peru and doing ayahuasca with them to manage their combat trauma. Now, Johns Hopkins was doing that. I think UCLA did some studies as well, and that's not a bad trip. I mean, they to get on like trials and like their studies, like they were paying for trips for veterans to go down there. Well, I did not get on their trials, but I did have kind of a light bulb moment that went off, and I said, well, if it's working for them, it might work for me. So I ended up not knowing anybody. I ended up finding this American shaman in this group of Californians. And I laughed because that's another story for another time. But anyways, these were these spiritual people, right, that were going to Peru. And I was thinking like, oh, cool, Americans, like I'll have people that I can, that speak my language and whatever. So I go to Peru, I do ayahuasca with these people to work on and treat the PTSD. Now, to be fair, I never touched a drug in my life up until that point. I never tried marijuana. I never smoked a cigarette. I never done anything. Okay. So I started off with ayahuasca and thought like, hey, let's go for it. Now on a side silly note, the people that I ended up going with or meeting up with in Peru were not the greatest people on the planet. It was a lot of the Hollywood elites, and they were like, that were there. And I won't say any names, obviously, but you will look at them and say like, these are people that are pretending to be spiritual for like, because it's a cool fad. But they were like rotten, like people, like they were just rotten people. So it was very weird. So I had to endure all of that with them, right? But I did end up meeting the most beautiful families in Peru that I'm still friends with now, 15 years later and stuff, right? So the point of me telling this story though is that I ended up going to Peru. I ended up doing ayahuasca, which is a DMT based sludge that you drink that makes you puke and makes you have hallucinations, but it does open you up and it does realign the trauma. It opens up the amygdala. It allows you to start to process things. I actually didn't have that much of a success with that. I'm sure it did something, but I couldn't tangibly put my finger on it and say that I had this benefit from it per se. But so then when I got back to the United States, I found out about the clinical trials for MDMA assisted psychotherapy. And I actually got on the FDA clinical trials and I did 5 rounds of MDMA assisted psychotherapy. That was extremely helpful. Very, very, very beneficial. And of course, because it was the FDA approved trials, it was therapeutic grade, it was the real deal, under medical supervision, all of that, right? So I did that. And then I had gone to a little while later, I had gone to South Africa and had done other spiritual ceremonies, working with different shamans, doing other versions of DMT, and everywhere I went, it was legal. To be fair, it was legal wherever I was doing it, right? But my point is that when I had gone to the VA prior to all of this, and I was seeking treatment, I had already had my master's degree in mental health. And I remember walking into this PhD doctor who sat down with me for one session, 45 minutes, 15 minutes, something like that, talked to me for a few minutes, asked questions, handed me a big binder, handed me a book and said, here you go. And I said, what is this? And he said, well, this is your workbook. He's like, this is what you're going to do. He's like, you're going to do these packets of homework every week, and then you're going to come in and we're going to talk about it. And I go, I have a master's in mental health. Like, that doesn't make me the smartest person on the planet, but I sure as shit don't need some homegrown like workbook. Like, I need somebody that's smarter than me to help me. Like, if a workbook would have helped me, don't you think I would have already done that and tried that to get rid of everything that was trapped in my amygdala? Like, I was just so shocked at, you're just a conveyor belt. You're just another number. Here's a book, read it. Okay, boom, you're done. Like, that's not treatment. That's a joke. Like,
Yeah.
I was pretty offended by that. And that was one of the other reasons that I was like, I'm not going to them. I'm not getting medication. I'm not going to do therapy with them. I'm going to go off and find my own way to heal. Okay. So this goes back to the question you were asking about, well, what can we all do? I'm not saying everyone needs to go out and do ayahuasca. That's not what I'm saying. The point and the takeaway that I'm hoping everyone hears is that take your health into your own hands. Take your mental health into your own hands. Start trying things. Start doing meditation. Start doing things that you think or that other people, say might provide you healing. Craziest thing, one of the things that I felt one of the biggest physical releases for, there was this divine feminine meditation. And I tried this numerous years ago, and you had to repeat like the phrases out of your mouth out loud. So it's a guided meditation. She walks you through it. And then she'll say things to like cut cords or cut ties. And I would repeat them out loud because, the sound resonance is more potent when you say things out loud than when you say them mentally in your head. Okay. Universe listens longer. You're kind of commanding, by speaking things out loud, you're commanding the universe to kind of work in your favor and to come to you instead of you just kind of throwing things, wherever you want. And so I remember speaking these words, and it was just cutting cords, like I cancel and cut all past contracts, toxic ties, blah, 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 with certain sexual assaults or abuse issues from the past, whatever it was. I could physically feel the energy release from my body. I could physically feel, it felt like I was floating, and I had like parts of me that were just removed and just taken out physically. And I was conscious, awake, like wasn't high, wasn't on anything, like just doing the inner child work, the healing work. And I'm not giving specifics because that's going to be different for everybody, like whatever you're drawn to. One of the things I always ask my guides is, if I'm stuck on a thought, I'll say, okay, I know you're not going to give me the answer because my guides don't do that, but they'll lead me down a place to discover it. So I'll say, I'm having this issue. I'm feeling contempt for somebody, or I'm feeling anger towards somebody, or I'm feeling pain in this part of my body. What is that connected to? What is that from? Can you show me, lead me, guide me to a method to get rid of that, to eradicate that feeling or that emotion or that issue? And they've done it 100% of the time. I'll be scrolling through something online, and I'll see something, and then just like, you feel this energy come into you, and it's like this big bright light shows up, and it's like, boom, ding, that's it. That's the answer, right? So my point though is that like the answer is going to be different for everybody, what they can do. But the number one thing that you can do to heal the planet is to heal yourself. When you heal yourself and you're no longer putting out shitty low vibrational thoughts and shitty low vibrational emotions on a daily basis, we would already be surpassed this great awakening. Okay. Dr. Joe Dispenza does a fantastic job of teaching people that every time that we think a thought, we send an electric pulse into the quantum field around us. And every time that we have a feeling, so think about feelings and emotions for a second: depression, shame, guilt, anger, anxiety, despair, hopelessness, helplessness, jealousy, envy. When we have any sort of low vibrational feelings, and it's true for high vibrational feelings too. So joy, happiness, bliss, gratitude. But we send a magnetic resonance out into the quantum field around us. Okay. So what you put out is what you get back, because it's a magnetic signal. Magnets attract or they repel. We'll talk about the attraction first. Okay. So if you're putting out anger, what are you going to get back?
Anger.
Anger. If you're putting out depression, what are you going to get back?
Depression.
And people wonder why they're stuck in these loops of negative, these just constant cycles of loops of negative emotions. So the exercise that I'm going to have you do today in a little bit is actually how to stop the momentum of all of that negativity that you're thinking, all of this depression, anxiety, misery, how to stop the cycle, the magnetic resonance cycle of putting out negativity, and to quickly switch that to higher vibration emotions. When you think positive thoughts or happy thoughts or loving thoughts, or you feel or can pull up emotions of gratitude, bliss, joy, happiness, okay, your brain has no choice to connect with your gut. And your brain and your gut work coherently together to release serotonin, dopamine, oxytocin. Those are our feel-good hormones, okay? Norepinephrine is, it's basically adrenaline. So sometimes it can work for us, but a lot of times it works against us as well. Because as soon as you start releasing adrenaline, then the body has to start releasing cortisol, right? So I like to put adrenaline on the negative side of emotions, right? So I like to say that if you're thinking high vibrational thoughts, so if I can start thinking thoughts, and this is tricky, but I'm going to teach you how to do it here in a bit. If I can start thinking thoughts that are high vibrational, and I'm putting out a magnetic resonance of high vibrational thoughts, I'm getting back high vibrational thoughts and energy into my system. Okay.
Right.
And so most people are stuck in a cycle where they have a momentum of negativity, like a snowball starting at the top of a hill, right? They have like this snowball of negativity. And then every thought is just gaining momentum and speed as they go along. And at some point, after the first couple negative thoughts, it's gained so much momentum and speed that they can't get out of their own way. They can't stop the momentum even if they tried. And then they're kind of just subject to whichever way the wind is blowing, whatever happens in their life, right? People are not playing offense. People are playing defense when they live their life. Okay. So one of the number one things you can do is you can play offense. And that's by doing the exercise that I want to teach you today. Now, we talked about magnets attracting. We didn't talk about magnets repelling. Think about a time when you walk down the street, and not like a homeless person. I'm not trying to be like biased or stereotypical, but like think of a person that just looked a little sketchy.
Mm-hmm.
And you walk by somebody and you just like start walking in the other direction as fast as you can. Like, have you ever had that happen to you?
Yeah.
Yeah. Like, I think that's happened to everybody. Like, it's not whether it's homeless or not. I use the excuse, like the example of just like walking down the street, but like, because that's where most of us come in contact with complete strangers. But you walk down the street, you feel somebody's energy, regardless of who they are, what gender, what orientation, what ethnicity, it doesn't matter what they look like, but you just like beeline it in the opposite direction. And there's some force that's pulling you away from them as fast as you can. That is the direct result of your magnetic vibration is repelling their magnetic vibration. You two are not a vibrational match for each other to even stand around each other and be in the same space with each other. Okay. So that can definitely work. That can work both ways. So it is so important to understand, though, that every time we think a thought, we're putting electrical pulses out into the quantum field. When we have emotions, we're putting out a magnetic resonance into the quantum field. Other people can pick up on the thoughts that we're thinking and the emotions that we're feeling, because other people are empaths. So the ADHD population is so amazing, and it's one of my favorite populations because people with ADHD naturally have such a large energy center on the top of their head, and they're so open that it's usually that population and those people that are pulling in and reading the electric impulses and the magnetic resonances that you're putting out telepathically, and they don't even realize they're doing it. Super, super interesting.
Yeah, that is kind of cool. Like, I think that it would be so helpful for all of us to have guides like you have, to learn what you've learned. I think it's so important to get out of our traditional system of education or of even religion and be able to tap into the broader world. I mean, I know it's not really the world, but it's just the bigger, like
You're
the
right.
quantum space, you
You're
know,
right.
and it's such a broader topic than this small, like little, like when I said the word dense, I just meant like the 3D world that we live in, that we think that everything that is out there is something either we see, think, feel, where we have this multi-sensory knowing, but it's so much bigger. And so that's what I think.
Yep. No, well, you're absolutely right. I try to not offend people, because I know that I'm one of the few therapists. Now, there are other people out there like me, but we are not the majority by any means at all. And we are going against the grain of the entire medical community. We are going against the grain of the entire APA, the psychological community, right? And that we are trying to, but I want people to know that there are people like me out there that are working their butts off daily to help save humanity, but on a different level. Like, I take my job so serious, because whether I have a liberal client in front of me, whether I have somebody that agrees with abortion, whether I have whatever, I put my own political views aside, or my own values or morals aside for that. Because at the end of the day, I have a human being in front of me, and I know that if I can help them heal, guess what? The whole planet ascends, the whole planet benefits from that, right? So the number one thing that we can do, and I will tell you, I'm in like these intel groups, lots of intel groups, for like the Great Awakening, the RV, all these different things that are going on right now, right? Nusara, Jasara, all these things. And I can tell you that even amongst the patriots, there are so many people that need to do the work and heal themselves. So they'll look at the memes that are posted every day that talk about healing and talk about this or that, but they just read them. They believe themselves that they don't have work to do. A lot of them do. And I see it every single day. And I'm thinking, well, if you did the work, you wouldn't have been offended by what that person just posted. Or if you did the work, you wouldn't have told that person just to F off. If you had done the work, you would, everybody could feel that you will have done the work, because everybody could feel your vibrational resonance that you're putting out, that you are in a neutral space, and that you're not angry or hatred towards different people or different populations of people, right? Like, people might not agree with what I believe or what I see or what I know to be the version of truth that I grew up in, and that's fine. Their souls allowed clearly to have their own opinion. But at the end of the day, I just want everyone to work on themselves. Because when you heal yourself, you literally upgrade the entire planet. Think about this.
Right.
So we just went over thoughts into the quantum field, okay? Electrical pulses, feelings, and magnetic resonance. Your thoughts and your feelings absolutely, without a doubt, 100 billion% affect the person that's standing next to you. Affects, you know what I'm saying? The people that you work with, affects the people at the grocery store. So when you're no longer putting out, and again, I try to be funny and say shitty vibrations, right? Like when you are no longer putting out like low negative hate and pain and hurt, and you're not looking at everything through the lens of I'm a victim and woe is me and whatever it is, when you're no longer putting that out and you're putting out neutrality, or you're putting out love, or you're putting out joy, or you're putting out whatever, everybody on the planet benefits from that. And I'm telling you, we would literally ascend overnight if everybody would stop pointing fingers at each other, could turn inward, could do the healing work themselves. We would be perfectly fine very, very quickly. Does that make sense?
Yeah. And I have an idea, actually, because you know that I have a pretty large platform that I engage with very regularly, right?
Yeah.
Currently, we have about 19,000, which isn't massive, but it's a good size. And they are the type of people I believe would be the most open to this inner work. Perhaps we could do a series of short lessons or whatever you would teach that we can actually help these people with, because that is why I feel like other sources, if you will, have tapped into our community, because we're the most open.
Yeah.
And if you read my emails that I get every day, you would see what I see. Like the openness, the love, the acceptance. Like I feel like I'm a baby in this community, Genesis. Like I am way here and these people are way up here. And I'm just like standing in awe. Like I can't believe I'm surrounded by these beautiful souls. But there's, of course, the sprinkling throughout that are still like me, very, I feel like my light is out there, but I feel like I live very 3D, most of the time. But what if we could come up with some sort of a series to train these people, and then their light will shine and train the people in their atmosphere?
And that's amazing. But I want to address something that you just said real quick, because I'm getting an intuitive hit for you real quick. So I kind of, and I say this with love, I say this with complete love to you. Okay.
I know.
But you, Tracy, often kind of insult yourself a lot because you don't have these guides that are buzzing around. I mean, everybody does, but you're not consciously aware of them. So you kind of insult yourself like, oh, well, I don't have that. Well, but let me be very clear about something. You are perfectly on track and you are perfectly on target, and you don't need to change a darn thing about you. And here's why. If somebody like me was doing your job, I would be way too far woo-woo, okay, to be able to tolerate and handle the mainstream of people that to organize all of the stuff and interview people and do everything that you do. You are perfectly balanced where you're in the reality that you're in, so you can tolerate and handle. And I don't mean tolerate in a bad way, but my point is that you're being very divinely used as a medium, okay, to facilitate and bring thousands upon thousands of people together and bring them into one streaming source of I can't think of the word, one area in which everybody can kind of come together. I can't do that. Do you see what I'm saying?
Mm-hmm.
I spend so much time on the other side, and I spend so much time healing and channeling, and I'm so far off into the world that I'm not capable of doing the tasks that you do every day. Does that make sense?
Thank you. Yes.
So please, I say this with love, but please stop insulting yourself and acting like you don't have a big role to play here. You are the front and center of this organization, and it's a beautiful organization, and we need somebody with your temperament that has your skill set, so everything can funnel from everywhere out in the ether and the universe. Everything can funnel right down through to you, and you can disseminate it out to the masses. I'm not capable of doing that. People like me are not good at doing that, because we're just not. It's not where our skill set lies.
Yeah. Well, I think I know I need to take the hammer out of my hand. And based on previous conversations we've had, I could probably benefit from some of the EMDR techniques as well, to release and let go of the trauma that I grew up with. And I have been told that I'm doing exactly what I'm supposed to be doing right now.
Exactly. To a T. You are with the people that you're with. You are promoting what you need to promote. You are absolutely perfectly on target. So I really want you to find a way that you can ground into that and appreciate that, and just be grateful that you found your mission and your purpose right now. In the future, it'll be different. You'll be doing something different. But right now, you are the pinnacle pin that is holding everything together in this whole community, in this organization. Does that make sense?
Yes, thank you.
Yeah. So
thank
please
you.
Don't sell yourself short. Now,
so what do you think of the idea of doing some sort of short little sections or lessons to help the people who aren't where, to help them get?
Yeah, of course we can. Of course we can. And I don't want to make money off of anything, so I want to just volunteer my services for free. I believe that if you're serious about your healing work and about helping people, that doesn't mean that I can meet with people one-on-one for free and then take up my time clinically.
Right.
But that means that I can volunteer some of my time, that we can create some things that you can put out, completely free to everybody, because that's the way it should be. People shouldn't be profiting off of healing, right?
Right. Like my Monday meditation that I'm doing. Have you heard?
Yeah.
I don't know if you've tapped into that, but I've heard from a higher source that it's perfect because the breath work actually really helps. The somatic breath work helps. The visualization of the world to come helps. So I've been told that that was a good thing, and I've actually been doing it for a long time. But yeah, I'm really excited, and I think that we can help get there faster. I've also been told that I want everything now. And
well, don't we all? Don't we all? I mean, seriously.
Yeah, it's been a long 2.5 years. I mean, for you, gosh, you've been living this for way longer. So do your guides give you any indication of the consciousness that we currently have on the planet?
We're from it changes a little bit, which is why I'm thinking about my answer very clearly, right? So it changes, remember that people talk about timelines, and that's true that the timelines have merged, but the timelines are still based on the collective consciousness that's on the planet at any given moment. So the deep state, dark forces, whatever you want to call it, they can speed stuff up, they can slow stuff down, they can omit things, they can erase things, they can twist things, and they still have those capabilities to a degree. They know that they've lost, so we're riding this out, but they are dragging their feet, and they're riding this out as long as they can, right? So we usually sit anywhere between 75 to 80% is usually where we sit. We need a little bit higher in order for this thing to bust open and to break. Okay.
Cool.
So I can't give a hard number because it fluctuates and depends. I mean, think about it. The consciousness is measured by every waking second of every waking experience that you have in that moment. So if you're in a bad mood, or somebody just pissed you off, or you just got fired from your job, or you can't pay your mortgage and you're stressed out and you feel like you're going to be homeless and you're like freaking out in fear, your consciousness is going to dip quite a bit. Your light's going to dip quite a bit. You are going to be kind of pulled out of that percentage, right? Until you kind of get yourself back up. One of the reasons that they are doing what they're doing, the dark forces are, is for that exact reason. I want everyone to think about the movie Monsters Incorporated, the Pixar movie Monsters Incorporated, okay? And they literally are measuring, right, the screams. They're intentionally creating fear, okay, intentionally to dim our lights and to activate our traumas and to make us polarized with each other, right? And so that affects the consciousness on a minute by minute by second basis, of course. But remember too, time doesn't really exist, right? So in the here and now, I know it's so confusing, right? But in the here and now, since linear time doesn't exist, right? In the here and now, that can change depending on what's going on the planet. So does that feel like a comprehensive answer? Like, I'm not trying to skirt it, but it's some of the stuff is very complicated to try to explain.
Oh yeah, I've heard it from other people before, so I'm familiar with it. I bet that a lot of the listeners may or may not be, I'm not sure, but I feel like our agenda together is going to be to take the people that are very open to improving themselves internally and intrinsically and help that way, because that's what we can do. As far as like the whole mortgage fraud and oh my gosh, that drives me crazy. We had a meeting yesterday with the realtors, like for the planning, like a brainstorming group, and one of them said, "Are we going to still use the same lenders we've used already?" And I said, "Are you kidding me? Do you not know about the mortgage fraud and how every mortgage is completely fraud?" And I just had like this, my heart was racing, and I just lambasted them. I'm like, nobody should ever lose their house, ever. And that's why this system is being created, so that everybody can feel safe and secure and just...
And the reason for that is we know that we shouldn't have to provide. Like, I'm not trying to be this. I have to be careful when I say this, because I don't want people to think that I mean that everything should just be handed to us. Look, I worked my butt off my whole life. Okay. So I still work my butt off every day to earn what I have and to pay my way in this world. So I believe in that, and that's fair. But we are one of the few places that you have to buy food, and you have to pay for housing, and you have to pay for your needs. Most other civilizations, higher vibrational civilizations, don't have to do any of that.
We're heading there. We're going to end up being there.
Exactly. And imagine the creativity, and imagine the free time that people would have if they were not forced to work against their will to get their basic needs met. They could be out helping people and saving the world and doing some of the most amazing, beautiful things if their time was a little bit more freed up.
Mm-hmm. One of the really cool trainings that we're working on, well, not me, but Ron, is the art of contribution. It was my idea, but I'm giving it to him because he's the master. But I love that feeling. If we go from a society of the hamster wheel of just the grind, the daily grind, to just how can I contribute to make this place better? It has a total different energetic vibe, right? Where people can live in their highest light.
It does. And my humanitarian projects that I have, everything is obviously set forth free, but there is a payment system that my guides gave it to me, basically. So I don't know if other people are doing it or not, because I don't pay attention to what other people are doing, right? But basically it's like, if people come and clinically need services, they need healing help, whatever it is, med bed support, whatever it is, they use the services, how many hours of service they've received, they're then going to be asked to give that back to the local community. And I've taken this one step further, even where like we will go out and canvass everybody that needs support or help. It could be the local grandma down the road might need someone to come and help her cook dinner. It could be maybe reading at an elderly home. It could be maybe going to a vet home and helping vets. It could be just other things, community service, cleaning up things, whatever it may be, big brother, big sister programs, mentorship programs, whatever it is. But we're going to go out and collect profiles and pictures and like write-ups on everybody. And there'll be like binders to like flip through where people get to choose the person that they want to humanitarianly give back this time to, that they've received from the services. So and this is all coming from spirit directly, right? So this is how they want the earth to look moving forward. That yes, money is no good, but you're going to be paying for things with your time.
Paying forward.
Yes, you're going to be paying things forward versus using money to actually tangibly pay for things.
So when you're ready, we just talked about this morning, we're going to start doing little interviews with people who want to present their projects to the collective so that people can duplicate the efforts, because we've already have so much going on in our group, and so many people are they've been working on things, and you already know how our website looks and how big and broad everything is, but there's people doing independent things. And I thought, why not put it out there? Like Abraham Hicks, let's get ready to be ready. And if you build it, they will come. So let's go and share these ideas right now instead of waiting. And so that people can get excited and go, oh my gosh, I love the way she has that. And then that way it's duplicatable instead of waiting. Like, let's just do it.
Yep.
So perhaps when you're ready, let me know, because absolutely. I would love to, that just felt so perfect for me.
Yeah. Well, and it is, and it really is. And if you're spending time, again, by yourself, turning inward, whatever that means, it doesn't need to be meditation. It doesn't need to be whatever everyone else says it is, but you got to get to know you. One of the most healthy things that I have my clients do, and this isn't in a book anywhere, this is just something that, a lot of the stuff I do is things that my guides give me to pass on to people. Go stand in the mirror. Go talk to yourself in the mirror. And I know that sounds so dumb and so lame. No, it really does. And I remember trying it back like 15, 20 years ago before I had gone through like my healing journey, right? And I remember like looking in the mirror and I would just break down and cry. Like I couldn't even talk to myself. I couldn't even open up. I'd get teary-eyed, I'd get emotional, and then I'd get mad because I looked stupid, right? Trying to do that. But it is truly the most beautiful thing when you can look in the mirror, talk to yourself, have a conversation as dumb as it feels. Tell yourself you love yourself. Tell yourself you forgive yourself. You start crying, let yourself cry. Let it out. Those are the moments, those are the tender, sweet moments that just release so much out of your soul. It is such a beautiful thing.
Oh my gosh, I love it. I'm so glad you're with me today. My other new teacher, okay, said the exact same thing.
No way.
On Wednesday, when I had an appointment with him, he said the exact same thing as my homework assignment.
Well, and I think that I think that a lot, and when I say channel, I don't mean channel as in somebody comes into me and takes me over. No, when I use the word channel, I mean I am communicating telepathically with a guide who's giving me information, and I'm just the medium that's regurgitating the information, and that's all I mean by that. But you're absolutely right. And some of the best exercises that I've gotten have come from them. A lot of us channel the same thing. We are all getting the same information just around the globe, differently.
Mm-hmm.
So I have a big affinity with the Pleiadians, and I'm not 100% Pleiadian, but I am part. My ancestral lineage is part Pleiadian. All of the Native American culture in the United States, well, in the world really, but I mean, especially the United States, those are all descendants or whatever of the Pleiades.
So is that that show Avatar, the Disney show with the blue people? Were those based on Pleiadians?
I don't know. I actually, I don't do a lot of, I know this is bad, but I don't watch a lot of movies and I don't watch a lot of television.
Right. Well, it's old. It's really, really old.
Yeah. So I really don't know. I mean, growing up, we were so poor that we had like a bunny rabbit ear TV. Well, we didn't even have a TV for the first like 15 years, but when we finally got a TV, it was like, we had like PBS, I think. Or if we had a TV, it didn't work, or it didn't get stations, or we didn't have like the antennas or whatever. So like we grew up with like for the first part of my life, we grew up with no running water indoors. No bathroom. We had an outhouse.
Wow.
We had no electricity. Well, we heat by wood stove. So I grew up, I'm in between my 30s and 40s, and I grew up probably like your great grandmother.
Wow.
So I just didn't we didn't do princess. We didn't do Disney. I never went to a restaurant when I was younger. We never ate out, never did anything. It was a very weird environment.
Wow, that's interesting. I mean, I thought I grew up, without much, but I'll tell you, it made us hustle, right?
Yep.
Like I've always hustled. I started working when I was super young, feeding cats and dogs and babysitting and, all of that. So before we run out of time, Genesis, did you want to teach the listeners an exercise still?
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. I wanted just to say one more thing real quick. When you talked about like growing up and being really poor and stuff like that as well, I have clients that come to me that were given everything growing up. I have clients that come to me that mom and dad never went on a vacation without them. Mom and dad never went on a date or an anniversary dinner without their child.
Wow.
Okay. And that child is so mentally dysfunctional because of that. They never learned how to self-soothe. They never learned how to operate, think for themselves, do anything because they had too much love and too much support. Believe it or not, that's an actual thing. I would have, if somebody had told me that, I would have never believed that, but without actually seeing it clinically myself. So my point is that I don't want people to think that like what we went through, absolutely, hands down, I don't want to go through it again. Okay. But hands down, absolutely was the most beautiful blessing in the world. Because once you get through it, and once you get to the other side of your trauma, you realize that every single negative thing that you had to endure, or that you were the victim of, or that you had to experience, makes up the whole and the totality of who you are today. And you don't want to change that for anything in the world.
Yeah. Yeah.
Right. So I have the most respect for people that come see me that are ready to do the work, that and then do the work. There's absolutely no judgment about how much they cry or how much, how much they kick and scream while they're doing it. Are you doing it? Are you benefiting from it? Like, that's like, to face your fears, to face your traumas is the most critical thing that you could do throughout this entire lifetime.
Mhm. Yeah, I think it sounds good. I mean, I told you a little bit about growing up and the trauma I experienced growing up. Thankfully, I've had a wonderful husband for 32 years, great life with him and my children. But yeah, I mean, I've never been able to work through all the crap I experienced as a young person.
Yeah.
So I'm sure it's affecting something.
Yeah, of course. And intuitively, I get you would need about 8 sessions. Eight
No.
sessions, 8 sessions of this alternative EMDR treatment, and you'd be done with it.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, is it like once a week? Is that how you do it?
Yeah, usually, yeah, because you want to give your body time to integrate. You don't want to slam it too much too fast, because then you know what I'm saying? You don't want to slam it too much too fast, because then you lose your grounding, and you don't want to lose your grounding, right? Okay. The exercise that we're going to do today is one of the modified exercises that I took from EMDR and made it super, super, super powerful. Okay. The premise of this exercise is that we, throughout the day, we tend to have a very negative mindset. The majority of our thoughts throughout the day, and I mean the majority, it's like 90% of our thoughts throughout the day are negative, and we have like 10% of our thoughts or something that are like more high vibrational or positive focused. So the goal of this exercise is to stop your brain right now from going into that negative cycle, force your brain into a higher vibrational positive cycle. And when you do that, guess what happens to your brain? Your brain and your gut coherently align, and your brain and your gut have no choice but to release serotonin. What happens when we get a nice boost of serotonin? Our anxiety goes way down. Our fear goes way down. Our stress goes way down. So we want the serotonin. Now, we are chemicals. Our brains, we are chemists. Our thoughts determine what chemicals are released, right, into our brain. So if we are thinking loving vibration, high vibrational thoughts, our brain is just going to get so excited, and it's going to start shooting out new neural pathways, and those neural pathways start to reconnect with each other. Dr. Joe Dispenza has the most incredible live brain scan activity to prove this. This has been proved scientifically over and over and over again, and we're talking about thousands upon thousands upon thousands of times. Okay? Wow. I think the research, if I'm remembering the research correctly, it takes 4 days of doing this exercise, or 4 days of doing an exercise like this, to start gaining ground on the new neural pathways that you are building. Okay, so think about when you break an arm and you have your arm is in a cast and you don't use it for 6 weeks, your muscles start to atrophy and they start to pull back, right? Because it's not being used. The brain is the exact same. When you learn a new skill, let's say you're sitting in algebra class and you learn a skill, it makes sense while the teacher's up there doing it. Okay. But if you're not practicing in it, and if you don't keep that skill set going, the actual neural pathways will atrophy back, pull back, basically, in a roundabout way. And then it'll reset yourself, and then you'll lose everything that you've just gained ground on. So it takes 4 days to do this exercise for you to start gaining ground and the neural pathways to stop pulling back, and for you to start building on the new neural pathways that you've just built. About 20, 30 years ago, researchers still believed up until that point that the brain that you were born with is the brain you were going to die with, and that there's just nothing anybody can do for you. We know now that that is the biggest crock of manure.
Neuroplasticity.
Yes, the neuroplasticity in your brain can be redeveloped, redesigned, rechanged. It is so powerful. And do you know that it all starts with the exercise that we're going to get ready to do here in a minute?
Cool.
Okay.
That's exciting.
So for purposes of the audience, we're only going to do it for 3 minutes. Okay. But at home, if you're doing this, I want people to set a timer for at least 5 minutes to start. Okay, but for purposes today, just because you're going to be doing this while I'm just sitting here awkwardly staring at you, right? So we're going to only do it for 3 minutes. Okay, now there's 4 steps to this. All 4 steps are very, very important. It's very easy. Nobody needs to be like, what's that step again? I'm going to go over it a bunch of times when I teach it here. So like you're going to remember, it's fine. Step 1 is going to be you're going to close your eyes. Real difficult, huh? Real difficult. Step 1, you're going to close your eyes. Step 2, you're going to take some nice, don't do it yet. Yeah, don't do it yet. I got to teach it to you first. Step 2 is you're going to take some nice, big, deep cleansing breaths. Now, what people often don't realize, breathing is one of the most important things that everybody can do. Breathing moves the circulation in the body. It moves the oxygen throughout the body. It forces our energy to move. So think about this. If you're feeling depressed, anxious, miserable, shameful, guilty, don't you want to move that out of you? Don't you want to move that heaviness and that denseness out of you? So we're going to take a couple big, deep cleansing breaths for step 2. And I always demonstrate it so people don't feel stupid doing it themselves, because you're going to make a lot of noise here. So we're just going to simply go in through the nose, out through the mouth, and that's going to look like this. So nice force, steady up, nice force and steady down. We're going to do that about 2 to 3 times. So you're going to close your eyes. You're going to take 2 to 3 nice, big, deep cleansing breaths to move the energy and the oxygen around your body. That's simple, right? Step 3. Step 3 is going to be, you're going to bring the light down around you. Now, all of your listeners, I'm sure, are very familiar with bringing the light down around them. You're going to imagine that the ceiling above you opens up, and that this beautiful shimmering gold, silver, white, whatever color you want, light from source comes down and around you and just kind of swirls you, okay? So step 3 is about feeling safe, about feeling peaceful, about feeling protected, okay? And about connecting with the divine, whatever that means to you. So step 1, you're going to close your eyes. Step 2, you're going to take 2 or 3 nice, really big, deep breaths. Step 3, you're going to bring this light down around you. And as you bring the light down around you, you want to feel loved. You want to feel safe. You want to feel secure as that's happening. Okay. Step 4, you're going to start to tap. I'm going to teach you how to tap in a second. You're going to start to tap lightly, and you're going to go someplace in your head. You're going to let your imagination run wild. You're going to go somewhere on the planet or in the universe or out into space, anything that you want to do. But here's the rule. It has to bring you complete love, complete joy while you do it. Now, the one rule that I do have is that you can be the only human being in your fantasy, in your imagination. You can have all the pets with you that you want. You can have all the animals that you want, but you can be the only person. And the reason for this is most people on the planet are too codependent in relationships. And that is whether it be their kids, their husband, their spouse, their partner. And that's great in some ways. But when it comes to you standing up and being your own individual person, it's not that great. You might be in a relationship, but you really need to stand on your own 2 feet and get your own alignment in check. And that is your soul's response, like your body and your soul's responsibility to do that. It is not the responsibility for you to want to go visit your grandmother mentally, or for you to take your husband and go do something mentally, right? Just for this exercise. You can do that any other time, but just not for these purposes. The purpose of this exercise is also for you to work on your own individual soul's autonomy. Does that make sense? And pets are in a permanent theta brainwave state, just like children up until the age of 7 are in a permanent theta brainwave state, basically. A little bit of alpha, but mostly theta. And so that's the state we put people in when we want to hypnotize people. Okay. So we want to have the right brain waves going through our brain, and we want to create that, which is why it's important that you be the only human being there. Does that make sense?
Yep.
Because it affects the entire outcome. Okay. So for me, one of the things that I love to do mentally is I love to go horseback riding on the beach at sunset.
That sounds lovely.
Well, mentally, of course, like I've done it physically too, but like mentally, of course, right? I love to go, I have a waterfall that I go to. I go and I kind of dance and frolic in flowers and in this field, and there's a big oak tree, and then there's this big, beautiful waterfall. Like that's my happy place. So if I want to pull in loving vibrational emotions, I'm going to pull in and do something happy and loving. Now, you can also relive a memory from your life that was very, very happy. That's another option as well. Like if your listeners can't get there with their imagination and they really struggle and they're not a visual person, they can also think back to when you were a kid. What was it like learning to ride a bike? Did your mom bake you a cake or give you a trophy or something afterwards? Maybe that was a very meaningful moment and you want to go back and relive that mentally during this process. With that, though, you would want to focus only on your achievements and not on the other people in your reality. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. So you don't need to tell me what you pick. If you don't want to, you don't need to tell me what you pick. But again, I'm going to go over the steps. So step 1, you're going to close your eyes. Step 2, you're going to take 2 or 3 nice big deep breaths. Step 3, you're going to bring the light down around you. Step 4, you're going to start to tap. I'm going to teach you how to do that in a second. And then you're going to go right into the memory. And as you go into the memory, you have to, like, you should have a half smile on your face. You should be in such a state of joy that you allow that joy and happiness to wash all over your body right now in the present moment while you're doing it. Here's what this does. It tricks the brain. It tricks the brain into believing that you're in a future time and space where your life is absolutely perfect and there's nothing wrong or nothing going negative on in your life at all. You're in like a 0 point energy state. And there's just nothing but goodness coming into you. Does that make sense?
Yep.
And your brain has no choice but to release the chemicals that are based off of that mental picture. Describe the process here in a minute, because the tapping that you're going to do right now is the same tapping you could do in EMDR if you're doing it remotely.
I've heard of tapping before. What's the guys?
That's EFT tapping. That's a different type of tapping. This is something completely different. What I basically did is I took EMDR and I merged it with another style that my guides had taught me. And so I don't do this clinically with clients, because clinically I have to stay in the framework of EMDR, because that's what people expect. But when people come to see me for healing appointments or medium appointments or Reiki appointments or whatever, I use my method. And I've actually found that my method, sadly, is quite more powerful. And my method comes from spirit. That's who gave it to me.
You are so blessed, girl. I'm so impressed and excited and
Good.
so happy we're connected. There's a reason for that, I'm sure.
Of course.
Okay, I'm ready.
Okay. So to tap, what I want you to do is I want you to move your beautiful hair out of the way. Okay. And the tapping is going to be really easy. I want you to take your wrists in your hands and I want you to cross them. And I just want you to put them right on your chest.
Okay.
Just be careful not to put them on your microphone. A lot of people tap on their microphone and then it's like, feels
that's
like
my mic.
Oh, perfect. Okay, great. All right. So you want to find your collarbone. And then you want to, then there's a little hollow portion right below your collarbone. You want to tap in that hollow portion.
Okay.
If you're tapping on your collarbone, it's going to hurt after a while. So you're literally just going to alternate tap. You're going to go, doesn't matter whether you go right, left, right, but you're just going to alternate tap. That's all you're going to do. You should hear a little thud. You might need to tap just a tad bit harder. You're doing it. There you go. Perfect. Okay. Perfect. Okay. Now, here's what the tapping does. And this is the reason why EMDR also works to release trauma. And this is really important because I want, if people listen to nothing else that I say, I want them to listen to this. This is why I kind of dog a little bit the rest of the therapeutic treatment modalities because they don't do this. They don't do what EMDR does. And that's this. As you're sitting here, like, let's say you were sitting here and talking to me about your childhood, and I was reflective listening and I'm doing all this stuff. You might feel 10% better that somebody validated your emotions, but guess what? Your thoughts are just on a cycle in your brain. And sure, you talked about them, but they're just going like this. They're just repeating over and over and over again. How many times have you been telling the story about your childhood?
I choose not to focus on it, so I don't tell the story much. Like you said,
Yeah.
you said to me last week that I tend to internalize everything.
Yeah.
And that's what I do.
But let me put it to you in a different way. Let's say that I know that you're happily married for a crap ton of years, and that's amazing. But pretend that you were like dating somebody, or before you met your husband.
Mm-hmm.
If some guy cheated on you and broke up with you, or was a total jerk to you, what's the normal response that people do? They call up their friends, they complain about it, they tell their parents, they complain about it. They've already talked about this to death. And yet it still affects them, and it still bothers them, and it's still there, and it's still heavy. It doesn't go anywhere. Does that make that's what I'm trying to get at?
Yes.
Now, for you specifically, you might internalize things and you might not open up and talk a lot. But when it comes to most people are posting their stuff on social media and talking to their family about it and talking to their friends about it. Most of the time, when people finally get to me as a therapist and come to see me, they've told their story, whatever that story is, usually hundreds of times. And guess what? So if talking worked, and if just talking about our problems worked, wouldn't they have healed themselves just by talking to everybody else about their problems?
Yeah, you'd think.
Kind of common sense, right? Okay, that's not what EMDR does. EMDR is so amazing because what it does is we know through REM sleep, the process of how REM sleep works. We know that if you can bilaterally sync the right and the left hemispheres of your brain together, link them together, we know that that is the magical formula for your trauma center back here, your amygdala, to open up and to release all of the emotions that are being trapped back there. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of.
Okay. So when we sync the right and left hemisphere of the brain together, and that's something again that yoga does, which is rare because yoga is one of the few physical things that you can do that also does the same thing, meaning that yoga can be very therapeutic for people to release trauma as well, because it kind of in its own way does a similar thing, right? But if you're thinking thoughts, and if we want to get rid of trauma, we have to bilaterally sync the brains together, the hemispheres together. That's the key. That's the magic formula. That's the magic potion that allows the amygdala space to open up. Now, when I do real EMDR with people, they feel, and we're just doing a quick exercise here, so we're not doing the full-blown real EMDR, but when I do that with people, they can physically feel, I hear it every day, they can feel the energy releasing from their body, literally. It's incredible. It's incredible. It's absolutely amazing. Okay. So what we're going to do is that and I'm just explaining the science behind why the tapping works. So what we're doing is we're doing a happy, loving, vibrational tapping type exercise here, right? So step 1 was to close your eyes. Step 2 was to take some nice deep breaths. Step 3 was to bring the light down around you with the feelings of safety and security. Step 4, you're going to start tapping. You're going to do your little tapping like this. And then you're going to go into your happy place for 3 minutes. You're going to go into your fantasy place for 3 minutes. And while you go into your fantasy place, you're going to be feeling the joy, feeling the happiness, and allow that to wash all over your body right now in this moment. Does that make sense?
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Do you have any questions before we start?
Are you going to tell me when to do each step? Okay.
No, you're going to do it on your own timing. So,
okay.
So you know the 4 steps to do, and you're just going to do them when you're ready to do them, and I'll let you know when the 3 minutes is up.
Okay.
Okay. Are you ready?
I'm ready.
Okay. You can go ahead and begin whenever you're ready. Okay, and you might want to start tapping too. Don't forget your tapping. There you go. Okay, Tracy, bring your awareness back to the room. I could tell you were loving it.
Yeah, we went on a beautiful vacation to the most beautiful place I've ever been in the Bahamas.
Amazing.
And they had pink sand in the Caribbean, like beautiful turquoise water. And
Aw.
that beach was like my favorite beach I've ever seen. So yeah, it was beautiful.
Okay, so tell everybody, because nobody wants to hear from me because I'm not the one who's doing it, right? So how was that for you? Where's your mental health state right now? What are you feeling right now after having just completed that?
Just bliss, relaxation, joy, peace.
Yay. So it really is that easy. That was pretty easy, right?
Oh yeah, totally. I got lost.
Perfect. That's perfect. And what I want to highlight here is that by you doing that, your inner reality of what you just experienced, and I could see and feel the joy down your body. I could see the half smile on your face. I could see your energy shift. I could see your shoulders drop and you kind of melt into it. I could see all of that. When we are in heightened states of stress constantly, our bodies release norepinephrine and they release cortisol to manage the stress, manage the adrenaline that we get from paying bills and having to go to work on time and doing all of the crap that we have to do as humans on the planet. We don't spend enough time in this type of state. Your body needs this type of a state for you to be in. Did you know? A lot of people don't know this. Did you know that your body will not digest food unless you are in a relaxed and calm state? Why do you think people that are nerved up have severe constipation? The body can't eradicate and cannot get the toxins out of our body.
Mm.
So you have to be, in order for your digestive system to work, in order for your gut to work and to be sending the proper chemicals and signals and to have the coherence between your gut and your brain, right? Because remember, 95 to 97% of your serotonin, your dopamine, and your oxytocin, well, and probably norepinephrine as well, receptors, they're not in your brain. They're in your gut. They are in your gut. So if you think that mental health has to do with your brain, that is the biggest fallacy out there. Mental health has to do with your gut, and it actually has to do with what you put into your gut as well. So if you are eating processed foods, if you are eating foods that are not healthy, what ends up happening is your gut says, oh, okay, well, because I am getting all this foreign substance that I don't know how to break down and I don't really know what to do with it, I'm going to go into an inflamed state. I'm going to go into a hyperactive state. I have to release cortisol to deal with it. I have to now deal with this whole sugar issue that's coming into me, and I have to now process and fight all of that. Okay, so when you eat crappy food, your body releases crappy hormones to process the crappy food, which is why you feel like crap. When you eat healthy foods, your body does the exact opposite. When you eat healthy, whole, organically sourced, grass-fed, non-GMO foods that you know where they're sourced, and they're providing nutrients and sustenance and value to you, your body has no choice but to release all the happy hormones to counteract a direct result of the food that you just put into it. Remember that through the process of mitosis, our cells split, right? And I'm not an expert in biology at all. So like, I don't want people to listen to this and go, she's wrong. I probably could be about this. But if I remember correctly, because I did keto for a while years ago. And if I remember correctly, we used to do 72-hour fasts. We used to do 3-day fasts. And that was to do a leptin reset on the hormones in your stomach, so you would no longer get cravings. So if I remember correctly, I think it's that your cells in your stomach regenerate, I think every 72 hours or something. And I could be wrong on that, but from my understanding, that's what I believe it was. And so that is so important, that if you have an unhealthy cell, guess what? The unhealthy cell is gonna split into another unhealthy cell. But if you have yeah, well, exactly, two, right? But if you have a healthy cell, it's going to split into healthy cells again. So what people don't understand and realize is that you change in real time your body's chemistry. You think it takes weeks to see the results. That's not true. Go eat an incredible, healthy, nutritionally dense salad with like dense protein or something, right? Like I eat like arugula, and we'll have like Brussels sprouts on it, and carrots, and pecans, and we'll make like a vinaigrette dressing, and we'll put like organically sourced egg, like boiled egg on it or something, or even bacon or something. Like, you can eat the yummy foods, they just need to be sourced correctly, right?
Right.
And if you're a vegan, I'm sorry, I don't mean to offend you if you're a vegan, right? But my or to anybody out there that might be vegan, but my point is that like, whatever it is that you're eating, your body just soaks it up, and then it releases the chemicals and the hormones that are in alignment with that food. That's one of the biggest problems of why people feel so crappy on the planet. I'm not telling everyone they need to do this, but there's no other way. My body, with how sensitive I am, with my ability to channel and see so much into the other world, that I cannot put anything foreign or synthetic into my body. The hardest times of my life was when I tried forcing myself to be able to eat pizza or eat cheese or eat things that my body just can't tolerate. So I have had to eradicate every product I use. Any makeup I use has to be as organic as possible and as pure as possible. My shampoo, my soap, all of my food. So I eat gluten-free, dairy-free, soy-free, grain-free. I eat everything free. All I eat is whole sourced foods every day, but I do eat the body. People will disagree with me when I say this, so that's fine. You can disagree. I don't mean to be offensive to anybody, but from the knowledge that I've read and the studies that I've read, our bodies need a little bit of real dense protein.
I love
not tofu, because that's processed, and not turkey bacon, because that's all processed. You need real, minimally processed, organically stained, dense protein. Your body needs the collagen from that, absolutely, in order for you to live healthy.
I love protein. I mean, I'm a CrossFitter. Come on, I have to have my protein to build my muscle, and I love big salads. It's so funny. I used to have a show on YouTube called Salad and Wine, because those are like my two favorite food groups. But I will add to that, I believe that European dairy, sheep's milk, goat's milk, dairy is way different than your craft cheese, right?
It is. And you're right.
And I will also make my own homemade yogurt with an organic half and half, so that it's got special probiotics, and it's the wheat.
It does, but that's pure sugar.
No, it's really not. Check out the Wheat Belly Doctor's recipe. Okay. It is half and half, does not have sugar, and the sugar that's in it, which has very little carbs. I've been keto for 6 years.
Okay.
And it actually is fermented, so that your end product, because I ferment my yogurt for 36 hours. So your end product is all the sugar is eaten out.
Perfect. Okay, great. That's wonderful.
And then I do ground flax, ground chia.
Yeah.
That's my background is nutrition. So I'm 100% aligned with you on that. That's awesome. Yeah. Okay, we have got to wrap up this show, my dear, and I would love to have you back. But what's your final message you want to leave the audience with?
I just, I want people to know that there's no alternative. There is no pill. There is nothing that you can do. I mean, there's absolutely nothing. There's no way around this. I just think back to all the times that I tried to find a shortcut, because that's what my brain does. If you're not cheating, you're not trying. I mean, not really, right? But like, try to find the shortcut, try to find, work smarter, not harder, find an easier way to do things. There just isn't one. I've been around, like my guides have let me explore those avenues and those approaches, and they've never worked out. And there's always been a very somber outcome. There's, being a couch potato is hard, but so is working out and being healthy. That's hard too. So choose your hard, right? So if everybody could stop pointing fingers, blaming everybody else in the world, right? For left, right, black, white, whatever it is, right? Like, just focus on yourself, turn inward, and get your own house cleaned up, get your own spirit, like your innerness cleaned up, work on your traumas, work on your eating, work on your exercise or diet. And that's going to look differently for everybody. But if everybody does that, every day you should be able to go to sleep, hang your head on your pillow and say, I exercised today, or I did something to move my body. I ate healthy today. I gave myself some time and attention today. I helped somebody else out today. You wouldn't have mental health issues if that was your reality and that was your life.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. It's lifestyle.
And in another one, we'll talk about, there are, so I'll just quickly say this. The FDA is obviously rampant in the United States, right? And they try to silence and they try to protect anybody from coming out against, their medication and their ways. So I knew that I wasn't going to find the answers to helping people with severe ADHD, with depression, anxiety. I knew I was not going to find the nutritional answers, the vitamin and mineral nutrition deficiency answers in the United States. So I started looking at studies from South America where they don't prescribe those drugs. They don't have SSRIs. They don't have psychotropic medication in lots of other countries and stuff. And so I started looking at some of the Eastern European Bloc countries, and I found some incredible studies that show very conclusively that there are very specific vitamins and minerals and amino acids. And notice that's all I said. I didn't say supplements. I didn't say drugs. I said vitamins, minerals, and amino acids that your body is deficient in if you have symptoms of depression, if you have symptoms of anxiety, if you have trapped emotions that are creating these symptoms, you are automatically deficient in certain areas. A lot of these deficiencies are functional deficiencies, and they will not show up on on blood work. Some of them will, but a lot of them won't. And so there are some, and the dosages and the amounts are going to be different for different people depending on their own biology, but there are a couple crossovers that everybody needs regardless. And we can go over that some other time if people really want to kind of naturally boost their own mental health. And that can help aid. That can help kind of boost your mood a little bit, and that will aid in you releasing the trauma work and you be feeling stable and supported when you do the trauma work inside of you. And when I say trauma, I don't mean clinically diagnosed PTSD. When I say trauma, I mean everybody's parents messes up their kids, right? We try not to mess our kids up, but every parent messes their kids up a little bit. There are patterns and behaviors and things that you went through that everybody's gone through, whether it be bullying, whether it be teasing, whether it be little things like that and I'm not implying they're little, but to big things like sexual assault or rape or combat trauma or whatever, right? I lump them all in together. It doesn't matter if you're holding on to something that you need to release. It's the same rules for everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
Am I saying that right?
So where can people, like, are you on social media? Do you have a website? Do you have any way, like, if people want more, should they just reach out to me and then I'll forward their contact info to you?
Yeah, I don't want a cult following. I'm really big on people thinking for themselves and using their own heart to determine what's right for them. Everything is a soul's choice. And so, I'm so busy with my healing practice and with my clinical practice, and I don't really have time to manage all of that stuff, but I do love channeling and doing psychic readings for people. I do love doing like healing sessions, and we can even do them distantly. If people want to work with me and they're serious about wanting to work and doing the work, then absolutely they can message you and then you can get them in contact with me. Is that fair?
Oh, that's good. I've done that with others before. So who, kind of live on the private side. So that is simple. Awesome. Well, I just want to thank you so much. This has been this interview's gone by so fast and I've learned so much.
Yeah, good. Well, I'm glad. And so, yeah, it was great. It was fun. I've never done this before. This was kind of fun. I was a little nervous, and I lost my train of thought several times, but other than that, it was a lot of fun.
Okay, you guys, that was a long show, and I hope you made it through the end. It was fantastic. If you want to reach out to her for an appointment, please contact me directly at tracy@highenergygirl.com. That's Tracy with 2 E's at highenergygirl.com, and I will forward her your email so that she can reach out to you directly. Thank you so much for listening. Go out and make it a great day. This podcast contains the opinion and thoughts of its host and guests. It is intended to provide helpful and informative material on the subjects covered. All statements made on the podcast have not been evaluated by the FDA and are not intended to diagnose, treat, cure, or prevent disease. If the listener requires professional assistance or advice, please contact your personal medical doctor. Both host and guest specifically disclaim any responsibility for any liability, loss, or risk, personal or otherwise, which is incurred as a consequence directly or indirectly of the use and application of any of the contents of these episodes. Like I said, this is my opinion and I could be wrong.